The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
Welcome to Garden Connections. I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. I'm standing in the middle of Clear Lake, Iowa, in this beautiful oasis, and we're going to meet the folks that make this such a wonderful place. Later on, we'll hear from Jennifer Oftelie, who's going to be showing us what's going into our community garden plot. And finally, we'll visit with John and Jan Ulland, who operate a high tunnel as part of their farm. We'll find out what it's like to garden in a protected space. I hope you'll stay with us on Garden Connections. We're visiting the Central Gardens of North Iowa today, and to show us around and tell us a little bit about the gardens, we have Barb Nicholas. Thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
This is a beautiful place.
We love it here.
Tell us a little bit about how this idea got started, because this garden is not very old.
There was a school here, and in 2000 the school burned down, and the public wanted to know, what are we going to do with this green space?
Right.
These three founders decided, let's have a public garden.
Great, and now you have this beautiful space. Tell us about some of the features of the garden. What are some things that people will see when they come to visit?
We're very pleased, and one of the main features is our moon gate. We had prom here last week. There must have been 500 people here taking pictures for prom night. Another new feature is our Nature Education Pavilion. It was just finished last year. We had our dedication. That was held May 1st, so that's one of our newest features.
Great, and so you have some structures for people to get in and hold classes and learn a little bit more about the garden, but you also have some beautiful kind of walking paths. Let's talk about some of the more plant-based features in the garden. What are some of the specialties that you have here?
Well, we do have 22 themed gardens. Each one has a different idea and focus. We have a low shrub garden. We have a butterfly garden, and there's already butterflies in our garden now today as we were walking around. Right behind us, we do have our Victorian pond garden, and we do have different plant material in each garden.
And you have a large variety of plants. It's not consistent throughout the garden, and the reason for that is what?
Is because of the theme. Right behind us also is the Indian summer garden. So these are plants that will bloom later in the season, so we have something blooming for the 3 seasons.
Okay, and we're visiting you in the very early spring, so not everything is blooming at this time. If people were to come in the early spring, what kind of flowers will they see that will be blooming at this time of year?
One of my favorite early spring flowers is called the Lenten rose, and it blooms around Easter, and it is blooming right now. Another fun one that gets a lot of the nature clubs here to see it, it's called Prairie Smoke, and that's a very unusual one that keeps having different changes as the season progresses.
So of course you have tulips, which is kind of a standard for the spring, and you have some really beautiful ones. You have some, they're almost black tulips.
Those are the fun ones, and those are unique. We have a few different tulips in the garden, but the black ones are fun ones.
Are beautiful, and you also have some really tiny ones.
Right.
Those were beautiful. They look kind of naturalized in that space. What is that variety?
Those are called Little Beauties, and it is a woodland plant, woodland tulip, and they will keep going and going and going, so they don't phase out like some of the cultivated tulips. Okay,
great. Now the garden is early in the spring, and you have a whole host of volunteers that come in and help take care of this garden. Tell us what happens in the springtime, and what are the chores that need to take place when you kind of unpack a garden like this?
Well, it's hard to believe, but this is an all-volunteer garden. Except for the hardscape, this is an all-volunteer garden that takes care of this and maintains this garden. So throughout the summer, we probably have hundreds of volunteers. We maintain the garden, and we need to, right now we're deadheading and getting rid of some of the old blooms from last year. And getting rid of the dandelions. Dandelions are full swing this year.
They start early, don't they?
Great season for dandelions this year. So we're trying to groom the gardens and get them ready for May.
All right, great. And part of that grooming process is, I understand you guys are quite green, and kind of figuratively and literally, in that you have a great recycling program for some of the waste that comes out of the garden. Tell us how that works.
We do. We try to be green here. We try not to use any chemicals. We're using a lot of mulch, And we're going to contact some of the tree services to get some mulch from the trees that they're cutting down now. We also take all of our vegetable matter and we put it in our cart that was hand painted by the art club here. Okay. We take it out to the landfill and then we bring back compost. They load it up for us and we'll use that throughout the whole garden, and it's great. It's like black gold. It's great material.
A great way to recycle things that come out of your garden, and folks can do that at home as well.
Right.
All right. So what's your favorite part of the garden?
You know, I've been asked that before. It's tough. It's tough. Every day I come here, there's something new blooming, so I'm surprised as much as the visitors that come here.
All right, and so you open in early spring. How late is the garden open in fall?
We try to stay open as late as we can. Usually it's the first snowfall.
Okay.
So there's no set time, and we're open from sunrise to sunset. There's no charge to come here. It's open to the public.
Great, and you have some wonderful plants for people to check out that are a little bit unusual that they may want to test out in your garden. You also have a few extra special residents. Tell us a little bit about your pond residents and the fun that they bring to this garden throughout the year for folks of all ages.
It's a treat to see them. We do have at least one duck nesting. I was cleaning out some of the cattails, and as I was cleaning it out, the duck popped out. I was surprised, she was surprised, and there was a nest with 6-8 eggs in it.
Oh, wow.
So we usually have at least 2 mallard ducks nesting in our garden, and a member of the DNR just planted a wood duck nest. So we hope to have wood ducks in our garden too.
All right, good for nature as well. Well, if you don't mind, will you show us some of the features? Let's go take a walk.
I'd be pleased to show you.
All right. And look at this beautiful tree. This is a crabapple, is that right?
It's a crabapple.
All right. And it looks kind of petite. Do you prune it to keep it that size?
No, we do nothing to that. That's been in about 5 years, and it's a miniature variety.
All right. Oh, this is great. And it's only 5 years old. That's fantastic.
And the butterflies like it too. There's a few fluttering around.
I'll bet. Great for this early spring. Well, let's take a look at what you've got planted below here. And this is called Lady's Mantle. I see you do a great job of labeling everything in the garden too.
That's our goal. We have more labels to put out. So this summer, that's one of the things we hope to do is plant more labels.
More labels. And what's special about Lady's Mantle? I can see it, but tell us what it does.
It's a fun one. We had a little bit of rain last night, and those leaves catch the rain or dew. If it's a heavy dew, and it just sparkles.
It does. It just sparkles. It's so bright. That looks great. And up ahead here, you've got a classic. You've got lilacs, and a lot of times you'll see lilacs on old farm places that don't even exist anymore, but you've got a couple of great examples here. Tell us about these lilacs.
These probably aren't the ones you see in your backyard. They're special varieties.
Okay.
And these are smaller ones. They don't get much taller than this because these have only been in about 5-6 years or so also, and they won't get much taller than that.
Oh.
And they're in full bloom right now.
They're in full bloom, and they look great, and I love the smell of lilacs. They are just wonderful. Oh, that's just beautiful. Well, let's go take a look at some more. So here's another one of your 22 themed gardens, and sometimes looks like you do environment themes, but this one is more of a family of plants themes. Tell us what you've got going here.
These are all plants in the lily family. We just planted this a year ago. It was designed by Bob, who's working today, and he bought the plants, designed this, and planted them, and he has also adopted this garden.
All right, it looks great after only a year.
Yes, yeah, we're pleased. We haven't seen all these blooming, so come July, this will be in full bloom. We're excited to see it.
All right, well, I can't wait to see the results of this, Bob. It's looking terrific. All right, you do have one blooming already. Tell us about this one.
This is also in the lily family. This is fritillaria. This is the first time we've seen it blooming in our garden, so we're excited to see it.
Great, looks beautiful. You also have some special touches in the garden. I see you've got a statue here. Is there a special significance to this?
This was donated by a couple, and the wife was a teacher, and this is to honor the school that was here. Central School was in this area, and so they've donated this to honor the students that attended school.
A nice reminder of what was on the ground before. Well, Barb, thank you so much for giving us a tour of some of the highlights of the garden. We really appreciate that.
Thanks for visiting.
All right. Well, we're going to take a look now at what folks like Bob do to get this garden ready in the springtime. Let's go take a look.
Okay.
So here we are in one of the garden beds that has not yet been cleaned out, and Leigh Trembath is going to give us an idea of what happens to these gardens. Leigh, you are a former board member and an active volunteer in this garden. Tell us a little bit about what happens in the spring when it gets to be time to kind of clean things out.
Well, it's an exciting time because it's fun to see everything starting to green up, but unfortunately we do have some work to do from last fall that didn't get done. So, for example, here, this yarrow, we come in, a number of volunteers all pitch in, and we just basically take the old and take out the old, clip it off, and put it in our green bags that we then carry on over and dump, and they go to the lawn waste and get recycled into mulch.
Great. And how hard do you need to cut these back? Is it just the dead foliage that you're removing?
Right, we're just removing the dead foliage, and you know, some plants you can actually just break off and pull them out, and this one's not doing that, so then that one I would just go all the way as far down as I could and cut that off.
Okay, great.
But the nice ones come right out.
Come right out.
And you don't have to even
all
use
right.
the pruners.
After winter they've kind of decayed a little bit and you can just pull them right out. All right. And this is an example of the yarrow when it's finished. And so this one's been fully trimmed.
Right.
And is ready to roll.
Yeah.
All right. What other activities take place? Do you rake out the beds? Do you put in new mulch? Does that vary by which garden that you're in?
Yeah, it does vary a little bit by which garden. We're here in the butterfly wildflower garden, and this one's, you know, not quite as formal. But typically we go in, we cut out the old, we rake it, and dig up the weeds, the dandelions that are so heartily living there. And then we do come in later and put mulch in. You shouldn't really put your mulch down when your ground's still damp.
Okay.
So you want to wait till everything kind of dries out a little bit.
Has had a chance to dry out.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at some of those tougher weeds that, like you say, dandelions that show up early, thistles seem to show up early. Folks at home have those in their gardens too, so show us how you take care of those.
Okay.
So over in this section, we happen to have a little of both. Happens to even the best gardens. So what's the best way to get rid of a dandelion?
Well, dandelion is, this is a nice little tool, and the ones with the padded handles really are nice. You basically want to just try and drive this down and pop the root, and sometimes you have to move it around a little bit to get that root out of there. And then you're trying to get as much of the root as possible.
Okay, and
Not always possible.
So this is a fairly young one, but still you got a good chunk of that root, and hopefully he won't come back.
Hopefully.
Be discouraged. All right, how about thistles? They're a little bit tougher.
Thistles are a lot tougher, yeah. Thistles kind of send out roots to the side. So with the dandelion, with this picker, it's kind of hard to get them. You lift a similar method to the...
there we go.
There we go. Similar method to the dandelion, but they tend to branch out, so it's harder to get the whole thing.
And it's helpful, isn't it, for the soil to be a little bit moister?
Oh yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's easier to pull them.
This is ideal. You know, it's a little wet, which, you know, that's a caution when you're getting into your garden and doing weeding, is when it's really wet, you don't want to be walking around too much because you compress the soil, and that's not good for the roots.
So moist but not wet.
Right.
All right, great. Well, I see Bev is working over in another section. I'm going to go check out what she's doing.
Great.
Hi, Bev. So you're busy working in this section. What are we taking a look at here, Leigh? Tell us what Bev is up to.
Well, she has a big task ahead of her. She's taking down some of this goldenrod, which is more of it's beauties in the fall, really.
Okay.
So right now we're just taking it out, taking the old off, and she's bagging it up to haul it out. These, I think, some of them at least, she's finding you can just break off. And they're dry enough that they can be broken and gotten rid of and not have to go to the clippers or pruners.
And kind of the wildflowers that butterflies are more attracted to are really pretty hardy, so they take a little bit of handling, don't they?
Right, they do. That's right.
All right.
The asters, the goldenrod, the different things like that. Yeah,
Great.
Very hardy.
So this looks like it's going to take a lot of work, but I understand Bev has cleared a beautiful bed on the other side of the garden. Let's go see her handiwork when it was all done.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Well, Well, here's a bed that Bev worked on earlier, and what a dramatic difference from the one that she's working on now. Looking good. And this is your Indian summer themed garden.
That's correct.
Tell us the type of work that she did here in this bed.
She's done a lot of work. She's trimmed out some of the old wood, kind of the dead wood. This is a barberry and has little thorns in it, and gorgeous foliage color. But
yeah, it's looking great.
Yeah, so she would have come in and taken out the dead wood from the winter.
Okay.
She also got rid of some of the more invasive. She's been working on some of the invasive plants like the creeping lily turf, and has gotten rid of that.
Some plants like to go out of their bounds, don't
that's
they?
Right.
Don't they?
That's
I see
right.
you've got some mint here, and that's known for being a very aggressive plant, but
Yes.
sometimes you just have to kind of trim it and pull
Try and
out
keep it in a mound.
what comes back in. All right.
There's some Husker red penstemon is a popular plant, and that also has a tendency to wander.
Okay, well this is looking much better, looking great, and it looks like it's ready for the mulch that you'll put in later this spring.
That's right.
All right, well your volunteers are doing a great job. The garden is looking wonderful, and we look forward to seeing it later in the summer.
Great, we'll look forward to having you.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Oftelie. Today I'm going to introduce you to the garden plan. Following some of the advice we got earlier from Rick at Iowa State Extension, and by consulting some of our favorite gardening guides, here's what we're hoping to grow in our Austin community garden plot. For our space, we're going to focus on color, favorite foods to eat, and seasonal variety. Now, our space is 15 feet by 20 feet, which is a good size, but it won't be quite large enough for one of our favorite summer vegetables, sweet corn. Sweet corn performs best when it has at least 4-row block together to ensure good pollination. So if you have a lot of space in your garden, go for it. Just remember to plant at least 4 rows wide instead of one long skinny row. Now, row 1 will be our northernmost row. So we're putting all of our tall plants here, like our asparagus and our sunflowers, so that they don't shade out the other plants. This row will also contain our summer squash and our winter squash plants. Going farther south to row 2, we'll host a related family of plants, our nightshades, potatoes, peppers, and tomatoes. While it's recommended that you keep tomatoes and potatoes as far apart as possible to minimize any potential disease transmission, our row rotation runs north to south, preventing any soil from hosting either of these plants for more than once every 4 years. The peppers and tomatoes are also heat-loving plants, so if we need to protect them in the early season with row covers, we can easily do that. We'll seed our lettuce in with our tomatoes, since we'll have plenty of space for that early in the season, and then later when we do our reseeding, it'll also benefit from the shade of the growing tomato vines. Now, row 3 contains our beans. We've got our dry beans and our green beans, cauliflower, broccoli, and peas. Now, our legumes and peas they're both nitrogen fixers and are relatively unaffected when following heavy feeding root crops, which we have planted in row 4. Now, by heavy feeding root crops, I'm referring to carrots, radishes, and beets. The rest of row 4 contains some really fun miscellaneous items like celery, onions, scallions, herbs, kale, and rainbow chard. Our rotation will run from north to south. So everything in row 1, with the exception of the asparagus, because that stays put, will move next year to row 2. And then the following year to row 3. Then row 4, and then returning back to row 1 the following year. Now, this column here with the asparagus, we're only going to do a 3-year rotation. It's even better if you have the space in your garden to allow for more rotations. We'll plan to keep things looking attractive with a border of hardy marigolds. Now that we have everything mapped out, let's get planting.
Thanks, Jen. Well, we are not the only ones making plans this spring. John and Jan Ulland have been making plans for their gardens as well, and they have the benefit of a high tunnel or a hoop house. And John has invited us out to his place to learn a little bit more about it. John, thanks for inviting us to be here.
Well, we're sure glad to have you.
All right. What exactly is a high tunnel, or sometimes they call it a hoop house? What is it?
Well, a high tunnel, it looks like a greenhouse, but it's a single layer of plastic. It's solar heated. It's not heated by any other means.
Okay.
Unless it really gets cold, then we got to do something about it. And then we plant in the soil. You know, we pull a chisel plow right through here just like we do out in the field, and we plant right in the soil. In a greenhouse, you're always on benches or in pots or something, but a hoop house or a high tunnel, it's in the ground.
In the ground. And so it's kind of like a giant clear umbrella. We're covered, so it's not going to rain in here.
No.
What do you do for water?
Well, you see, we lay this plastic, we have what we call raised beds, and then there's a plastic water line that's laid under each strip of plastic, and then we've got the water comes in from the well, and we have it on a timer because I sometimes forget to turn it on or sometimes forget to turn it off, and so we have it on a timer, and as the plants grow, we increase the time, and until we get in the, you know, when they get full production, then it's about 3 hours a day that I water.
All right, so that comes on automatically whether
Right.
you're around or not.
Yeah. A high tunnel allows you to be organic. I'm not organic, but this could be called
Makes it
organic
easier.
because
Yep.
we don't use any insecticides or pesticides in here, and we have no disease because of the rain drops hit the ground outside, and the disease splashes up on your tomatoes.
Sure, you won't
and you
have
get
that in
disease. I plant these tomatoes now, and they're going to be just as green as this until they freeze, and usually it's end of October, early November.
So you really have extended it both not only early but on the late end as well.
Yeah. I mean, it surprised me that these plants that are supposed to produce one crop will produce all season long.
All summer long.
They stay healthy.
Now you've started a few things in here already, even before the tomatoes that you're putting in today. Let's take a look at some of the things that you've already got going. So here we are, we're in a row that you've already got started a little bit, but you're going to show me how to do this. So let's give it a shot.
Okay, I like to show people how to do this, that I don't have to do so much. But first I just make a cut in there, and then I take my trowel and I move some dirt.
Okay, so you don't take it out, you just kind of
Move it.
make a hole in there.
Sometimes you have to get your hands dirty. Then I take this, put it down in there, push it down, trowel out. And then we move on.
Move on to the next. And about
18
2 feet,
inches.
18 inches?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay,
So you made kind of a T shape there.
yeah. That's far enough. And
And cut that way a little
hey,
bit.
okay,
Okay.
you're on the payroll. Well, I don't pay much though.
And you were telling me that when you take a new plant, you actually peel off that bottom
I take
one.
off this bottom leaf because I plant them as deep as I could get them in.
All right.
Take that
Drop
down,
that
just
way
press
in
it
there.
way down as far as you can. and-
Yep. So
Okay.
that's in there. Oh, a good 4 inches. And then you wiggle that dirt around. All right. Now in your row, it looks like they're a little bit off-centered.
Yes.
What's the reason for that?
My water line runs right down here.
Okay, so
and
your
I-
water line's
I
about
want to make sure I don't
4 to
cut the
6
water line.
That's a
That's
good
pretty
idea.
essential.
That's a good idea.
And it's
all right.
hard to fix. They're fixable, but okay, you're gonna
But
make
not
me
if you don't have to, right?
about right here.
Here. And you've got this plastic laid down. What's the purpose of the plastic?
Well, I think when we looked at the beans, you saw I didn't have plastic, and you also could see a lot of weeds. And when you have tomatoes, you don't like to have weeds, and it also, I think, protects, well, it's just a labor saver.
Okay.
And,
Is it you and Jan that do all this, or do you have extra help that comes in?
well, my son and his wife-to-be like the garden, I hope.
That's handy. That's handy.
And so they're learning today, you know, they're watching you, and they're learning from you today.
I think I'm ready for them to take over.
Oh, no. Are you guys ready for letting her leave? No way, huh?
Well, this is very fascinating. And so you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. Are these all going to be tomatoes then?
Yeah. I'll put a few peppers in. I like to be able to make some fresh salsa.
Okay.
So I want to have some early peppers and early jalapenos. And
Are there other crops? Do you change out your crops in the fall when your tomatoes are done for that extended harvest late into the season? Do you put more cold hardy crops in here?
No, the tomatoes stay here until they freeze, and it's usually the very end of October when it gets, you know, it gets down to 28 or so, and, and then we take the plants out and I pick off the green ones and bring them in the house. And I think we had our last tomato like in January sometime this year.
Wow, okay, and so then they
and
ripen
it's not
in the
quite as good as summer tomatoes, but better than store-bought.
But better than store-bought. All right.
And I know where they came from. You know.
That's right. It makes a difference.
That's
you know how they were
the
grown.
nice thing about growing your own product is you know where it came from, you know how it's been treated. And
Well, John, thank you so much
Well,
for showing us how it's done in a high
thank you,
tunnel.
and if anybody ever has any questions or wants a pep talk about a high tunnel, I'll sure give them the...
You're the guy to ask.
Because if I was a young man, you would see 100 of those here.
Watch out.
That's the only way to grow stuff.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for coming.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed this Garden Connections, our visit to Clear Lake, to the Central Gardens of North Iowa, and our visit here checking out how high tunnels work. I hope you'll join us next week. I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. On Garden Connections, we'd love to see photos of your garden. Or if you have questions for our garden experts, contact us by emailing garden@ksmq.org or like us on Facebook.